Good evening. It is 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. And this regular meeting of the Sandpoint City Council is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street in Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I'm Mayor Shelby Ronstadt presiding. Also present are councilors Kate McAllister, Deb Rule, Andy Grote, Jason Welker, and Justin Dick. Joel Espiro is absent. We'll now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any announcements from council? Any announcements from staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a quick announcement. This coming Monday will be our first recognition for City of Sandpoint of the federal Juneteenth holiday. And so Monday city offices will be closed. Will reopen on Tuesday as it is an official city holiday as per council action last December.
All right, thank you for that announcement. And that's it.
Yep.
We'll now proceed with the public forum portion of the meeting, which gives the public the opportunity to address the council and myself on items either listed on the consent calendar or on any topic that's not on the agenda. Those here in chambers who wish to speak will need to complete a sign-up form, which is located by the front door on the table. And they will need to fill that out and please hand it to the clerk here up front. If you're on Zoom and wish to speak, you will need to please raise your hand. Comments shall not be personally derogatory, nor shall they be personally directed at any individual, organization, or business. Public comment opportunities during meetings are for comments only. Please do not direct any questions to council or to staff, and please do not approach the dais. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, has anyone indicated that they would like to speak in the public forum this evening?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. That concludes the public forum portion of the meeting this evening. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $1,326,612.86, reflecting $583,385.81 for regular payables and $743,227.05 for payroll. Are there any items council wishes to remove from the consent calendar? Being none, I would entertain a motion that the consent calendar be approved.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Grote,
Yes.
Counselor Welker.
Yes.
Consent calendar is approved. The first item under old business this evening is adoption of the proposed 2022 to 2027 strategic plan. I will now yield the floor to City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for this presentation tonight, Roger Woodworth with Mindset Matters is with us and will present the final strategic planning framework to City Council, as well as go over our process to develop this year. By historical context, the city adopted its first ever strategic plan back in 2017 with the assistance of Roger. And that was a one-year plan. And then the following year, we went back and council adopted a 3-year strategic plan. And we are just at the completion of that plan. And this one before you tonight is our first 5-year strategic plan. And so you'll see we've added a lot of priorities, which have come through discussions with the council. And I would like to recognize too our leadership team, our staff who put in a lot of work, even preparing for council, a lot of data and information that really helped council to form the priorities under this plan. So with that, I will hand it over to Roger.
Thanks. And we have some slides to call. I'd like to begin with my own kudos to your team. I've been at this off and on with your staff for a few years, as Jennifer has mentioned. And I've got to tell you, a lot of people think about strategy and planning as we start with point A and we end at point Z, and it's a straight line between the two. And nothing could be further from the truth. And I know you know this from your own deliberations, that you wrestle with the information and there's conflicting pieces of ideas and issues that have to be rationalized in some way. And the team that's sitting behind me here has done a lot of that yeoman's work with guidance from you. And that's what's resulted in the plan that you'll see today for your approval. So it's been my privilege to work with you as well as this team over the years. And I'm not sure I'll be back 5 years from now. I may be out of commission by then, but it really has been my privilege, and I appreciate the chance to present this year's product to you. So we're going, as Jennifer said, we'll start with just an overview of the planning process. So everyone, for the record, understands what has happened here to develop the plan. And then we'll do just a summary of an overview of the plan itself, which you've all had some chance to review ahead of time. So with that, if we could go forward one slide. This is just a little bit of grounding. As Jennifer mentioned, this process started in 2017 with a team charter. And in the next slide, I want to share with you the original statement of principles and purpose that the leadership team at that time came up with, which is still intact today. That was in March of 2017. By April, we had the draft of plan and recommendations. And then there was a deliberation with the city council at that time to come up with the distinctive city thriving future plan dated in June 2018. So that was our foundation back then. But from this work, we not only had the commitment to share principles that I'll share with you in a moment, but new projects like the memorial field projects and other facility updates, and very importantly, the master plans. The first time that, and with this council's direction, the staff crafted master plans that allowed the city to see all the big ticket items all at once, so that your choices about prioritization can be made in an informed way. And that to me was one of the most significant strategic improvements that was made as a result of that work. And there was also during that time alignment around organizational standards of conduct, a shared sense of vision and purpose for the city, and a new set of expectations around accountability. That sometimes people struggle with those kind of changes, but at the end of the day, it's the thing that brings your resources into alignment to achieve the things you say are most important. And that's a lot of the results that you've seen over the last several years. So I mentioned this was the team charter from 2017, and I've seen a lot of these over the years in my work as a strategic counsel and facilitative leader. And this one just hangs so tight because it covers the most important things that any team needs to do: how people work together, how they coordinate their actions, their commitment to trust and collaboration. Very, very potent, and it's one that I believe will continue to stand the test of time. So next slide, please. So for the current process, this year started in November of 2021. We first, you may recall this because we started with a survey of the council as well as the leadership team. But at the first leadership team meeting, that launch meeting, we presented only the leaders' survey results, not the results from council. And that was really just to get their own sense prior to influencing them with any other inputs about what they saw as the most important priorities. That information from the survey informed their deliberations, and from that they identified the kinds of facts, information, and additional analysis that they needed to review. So that information was presented by the staff to each other at the meeting in December 17th, where they set out to affirm their team norms, how they wanted to work together as individuals on behalf of the city, but also to review the performance trends of the city, and also at that time look at the council's survey inputs, because they already had their own, and now they could begin to compare and contrast where there were strengths and alignment and where there could be differences. So from that work, then they developed the initial priorities that were to be presented to you. That work was done in mid-January, the 14th of January. They also identified several areas where they felt it was important to present background information because the issues were complicated or had complexities to them. And for you to do effective deliberations, they identified several areas. Let's go to the next slide. One of the areas that in affirming team norms, this team came up with, it was an enhancement to their vision. And you can see it here. Our team will achieve success through a cooperative effort that clearly defines and communicates expectations, goals, supports mutual success, encourages communication within the team members, and provides leadership that inspires trust and confidence from its stakeholders. So this is not to displace the earlier charter, but to supplement it and to add a fresh dimension that's current with this intact team. So good news on that front. Slide. I should say before we dive to this next piece that well, actually, I think we're good at this point. Let's just move ahead. So shortly after the meeting that the staff held in mid-January, a week or so later, we came together with you. You'll recall this, I'm sure. The staff presented on several areas. Let's go ahead one more slide. And to the left on the slide here, you'll see the agenda from that meeting that we held with you. The purpose was then to assess the organization's needs and align leadership and council on the strategic priorities. So the objective of the project, of course, was to do the situational assessment, which the leadership team had completed. And then they completed their deliberations to present their recommendations to you. At this meeting, those recommendations were preliminary, they weren't final. And that was because you hadn't yet had a chance to deliberate their meeting and all the rest. So the inputs that the team had considered included the perception surveys that I mentioned, the performance trend data, as well as the master plans. To the right of the slide, this was a list of the briefings you received at that meeting. The areas of greatest agreement from the survey work, as considerations in allocating financial resources, a deeper dive into how the money works here, where the revenues come from and its limitations. Anticipated capital projects, estimated cost and timing of those, the factors that are affecting residential construction in your community was another big topic for discussion. And then finally, defining the scope of essential services. There's a lot going on in your essential services area, your utilities that needed attention. So with all of that background, then the discussion we had collectively was to deliberate priorities. Identify missing issues, other additional analysis, those kinds of things. If we go forward one more slide, this kind of wrapped up that meeting. This is my sense of how that all turned out was that you collectively had a deep appreciation for the staff and the work they had gone through and a recognizing the complexities that they were dealing with. There's broad agreement with the general priorities that they had identified, including some of the continuing priorities that came forward from the earlier plan, plus the new ones. But there were three important areas that you asked that they do additional analysis on or develop additional information. And those three areas were the watershed management and recreational planning. You wanted to know more about the approach and the schedule for what that plan would look like. You also identified essential service needs, costs, and rate implications, needing more information before you would go ahead with approving any particular strategies in that area. And finally, the capital improvement projects. What are the timelines, the backlogs, the amounts, so you could get a more refined picture than the preliminary look that you got in January. So it's my understanding that that work has been done. You received that information already. And before I proceed to go through what the final recommendations on the strategic plan are, do you have any questions about the process? If not, we can go forward one more slide. So we've kept the same theme. Sandpoint is a distinctive city in a thriving future. The plan now, though, is 5 years, 2022 to 2027. This also stays largely the same. One of the beauties about well-crafted strategy is that it stands the test of time. The strategies themselves, these pillars, are umbrellas. They capture a wide mix of themes, but of things that you undertake in any given time. The initiatives may change, but the themes tend not to. And that's what you have here. The city of Sandpoint is to be distinguished by its lakeside beauty, small town feel, and welcoming people with core values that you can count on the city council, the mayor and staff for high integrity, collaboration, and stewardship. Powerful commitments. The priorities are represented by 5 pillars that support Sandpoint's future as a strong and resilient city that governs effectively, invests wisely, and grows responsibly. Those 5 pillars are here on the slide: responsive government, resilient economy, a sustainable environment, vibrant culture, and livable community. Again, they really hold together well, and it's kudos to the work of the council at that time that this holds tight even to this day. What follows then, if we'll go one more slide, are the definitions that we have for those 5 pillars. These have not changed either, with one exception. Under responsive government, there was one amendment in the very beginning. We are forward thinking. So when you think about all the planning that's been done and the anticipation of issues and the master plans that look forward in time, those represent forward thinking, and that phrasing wasn't in the original definition, so it's been added. but all the other ones remain as they were from 2017, 2018. So this slide takes those 5 areas of government and identifies now a new set of strategic priorities for the next 5 years. So what you see to the left column here, the strategic priorities for 2022 to 2027, those are categories. They're thematic areas that require attention from the city in terms of the priorities of initiatives to be done here. When you look across, you'll see the five pillars, these umbrella strategies, if you will. And now with the gray boxes, you'll see what each of the key areas, the key themes of priorities, how it feeds those different pillars. Some do many things, some of the priorities only touch on a few, but all of them cover the waterfront in terms of making sure that the city is taking actions and prioritizing initiatives around the things that are most important to the whole of your long-term future. Okay, so we're going to go through just in highlights. I'm not going to read all these to you. I know you've had a chance to look at them previously, but there are 9 total, starting with housing, diversity, and growth to ensure the availability of appropriate variety of developable land and housing to meet the needs of local community and responsible growth. There's a number of different initiatives here, all of which are important, but it includes a variety of assessments on the housing supply and situation, as well as some specific updates on certain titles in your code. The next, integrated planning. I mentioned the master plans. The time has come now not just to update those plans, but also to make sure they're integrated across the plans. And that's what this priority identifies, to review, update, and integrate the master plans to optimize outcomes for the city as a whole. This includes a variety of topics as well: master plan issues, integration, parking and transportation infrastructure plans, and a full-fledged code review beyond just the housing. Next is reliable community infrastructure. To ensure the city's infrastructure has sufficient capacity to meet the community's long-term needs and resolve any backlogs of deferred maintenance. So as you heard in the January meeting, there's a lot going on and still a lot of needs and information. These initiatives build on that and identify what has to happen next to make sure you're in a position to meet the growth of the community as it unfolds. Next. Responsive community service. This has a little bit longer list of initiatives to be undertaken, but it's critical for delivering essential city services both efficiently and effectively. Right? You want both of those, not one or the other, in ways that also earn high satisfaction from your citizens. So there's always room for improvement, and these sets of initiatives focus on making sure that you're paying attention to those very things. Looking internally, workforce productivity was another of the categories. Continue to build a performance-oriented culture that's also integrated, right? People mutually supporting each other, but with the support of employees who are trained and resilient. So that has its own implications. It's not just about saying, hey, we hope you do better, but actually making the investments necessary so that employees actually have the skills and are supported in ways that allow this to be true. And these initiatives cover that waterfront. Looking outside the organization, we have citizen access and engagement, trying to make sure we're ensuring equitable, reliable access to all, to city program services, facilities, and other assets. So a lot of what you'll see here concerns ADA, but it's not just ADA, it's also how we communicate and enable communications from citizens back into government. So these initiatives look to address that to make sure you're on doing the right things on point for this topic. A couple of others, optimizing operations. This is internal efficiency. It captures a little bit more than the earlier topic, but is more of a focus on technology, fleet, and facilities to make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for the buck. Cost efficiency of government's key. There's a category of intergovernmental relations. There's not very many things on that list. One more slide, please. But they're all important. How the city works with the airport, the urban area transportation plan, the issues of tourism and economic development. You're not alone in that. And so how you coordinate, how you cooperate, how you invest your resources in service to your citizens leveraging that in support with others is always an open question. And these initiatives are looking to address that. And the last of these is economic prosperity, to sustain and grow a diverse economy in responsible ways. So these certainly speak to arts and culture as well as the downtown revitalization. There's a fiber system questions that you have to wrestle with, as well as topics. I think parking is in here somewhere. And then the questions about how or if and how the city may choose to coordinate with the Economic Development Corporation of the county. So those are all open questions, but the initiatives are on the table for your staff to follow through on in each of these categories. And I think that represents the summary view of the whole of the plan. These are the strategies, not the operating plan that comes, but these give you clear direction as a compass as to what you would be affirming for your staff to take the lead on and to make happen over the next 5 years. If there are any questions, I'll field them to the people behind me.
Thank you, Roger.
You bet.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I just want to thank you very much, Roger, because it's always I love strategic planning. I'm a nerd about that. And so I think it's always great when we're all together and we discuss these topics because we have such dynamic and diverse views and how it all comes down to a really great plan and it's so much better than operating in a vacuum.
Yeah, for sure.
So
That is
thank
for
you very
sure.
much.
You're very welcome. It's again been my pleasure.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I too would like to thank you very much for your time, as well as thank the previous councils that got us to this point. I think it's important that those 5 pillars that were stated previously, those are in fact our pillars as well as our filters to be able to, as initiatives and priorities change for the future, do they flow through those, which is also going to be important for future councils so that they're not reinventing the wheel, that the initiative and priorities do shift and change as the needs of our community could be addressed. However, the pillars of our community, the foundation that we're built on are these. So thanks for maintaining those.
It's well said. Yeah. Here's a metaphor that might be useful to you at some juncture. And we all learned it in probably in elementary school. That's how you play tug of war, or more importantly, how you win at the game of tug of war. And there's 3 critical elements, 3 ways, things that have to be true to win the game. The first of those is that you have to have your resources all in the same rope, pulling in the same direction, all at the same time. The rope represents your purpose or your initiative, your goal, whatever it may be. And the resources, the people on the rope, are all of the resources, not just the people talent, but your financial talent, your assets, the facilities, whatever it might be. And pulling in the same direction at the same time, those are 2 critical elements enabled by facilitative leaders. And if you have that, the chances of winning are really high. But if you have people that are on the rope but pulling in different directions, you're diffusing effort. This plan and the work you've been doing as a city shows you're working really hard, not just to have everybody on the same rope, but to have them pull in the same direction. And when that happens, the chances of creating great outcomes escalates, right? The probability rises exponentially. And you've been realizing many of those benefits. So congratulations. Thanks again for the time. If there's anything else?
Roger, you've been working with us now in strategic planning for 5 years, and I want to thank you for your service to the city. You set us off on a great course, so really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. All right.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this matter? Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution for adoption of the 2022 to 2027 City of Sandpoint Strategic Plan. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? So be a roll call vote.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes, and I'd like to thank some of our previous council members who were on board and that 5 years ago who really helped immensely with developing some of those 5 categories for us.
Counselor McAllister.
Yes.
Okay, the City of Sandpoint Strategic Plan is now formally adopted. Next, under old business is a proposed amendment to the city's agreement with Logan Simpson Design for professional services related to the comprehensive plan update. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeten. Thanks, Amy.
Tonight before you is a proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan professional services agreement with Logan Simpson Design. The request is to amend the contract with Logan Simpson Design for additional services to complete the comprehensive plan. Additional services will include updating the existing conditions and trends analysis based on the Leland land use study that is currently underway, reviewing and reconfirming the community vision, revising goals and policies as necessary based on additional information gathered, updating the future land use map and area of city impact based on land use data, utility data, and negotiation with Bonner County, and public engagement throughout the plan drafting and adoption. The original contract amount was $100,000. The amendment would increase the contract not to exceed $135,600. And the anticipated completion date is February 28th, 2023. Sorry, that's a typo. The only wish. And this is an updated from when I presented in April. This is an updated timeline. Again, it took a little longer to get the contract in order, and we are hopeful that that joint meeting with Council and the Planning Commission on the land use study will occur in July. So some of these dates have been moved out slightly because that land use study is a critical component to reviewing and updating some of the existing information we have in the plan. But this is still showing that the timeline for completion is end of February 2023. That is all I have.
Okay. City Council, any questions for Ms. Tweet? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Madam Clerk, do we have any one from the public that would like to comment on this matter?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, given that, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution for amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Logan Simpson Design Incorporated. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Groot.
Yes.
Okay, and the professional services agreement with Logan Simpson Design is hereby amended. The last item under old business is a proposed amendment to the city's agreement with JUB Engineers for professional services related to the wastewater treatment plant, and I will now yield the floor to Utilities Director Greg Lanning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Greg Lanning, Utilities Director. This item is for professional engineering services at the wastewater treatment plant. There's several attachments in there in your council packet in addition to the agenda report itself, and I'll review some of those items. These services are for the design of a band screen at the wastewater treatment plant with JUB Engineers. We contracted with JUB well back in 2017 to do the wastewater master plan itself. And this project has spun off of that effort as one of the bridge improvements. And those bridge improvements are essentially improvements necessary at the wastewater treatment plant to keep it up and running and compliant until we're able to replace the entire wastewater treatment plant. And there were several of these bridge improvements listed, the band screen being one of these. A band screen is a was just thinking a good analogy would be like a timing belt on an engine or a chain itself. And some of those belts are hinged and reinforced. It's a similar action as far as this band itself is concerned. So it's a screen that rotates at the very front end and separates out solids to protect the system downstream. It'll rotate, pull the solids out, and then put the solids in a special place for us to dispose of otherwise. It also includes washing equipment to wash down this band screen. This is one area of the wastewater treatment plant that you don't want to spend much time in, and you want to do everything you can to automate it. And that's what this will do. In addition to that, there are several areas in the wastewater treatment plant that are parallel systems in case one breaks down or one that we need to maintain. Plus, we can run both at the same time in some cases for capacity issues related to treating water. The band screen is one of those that's required to have redundancy. This band screen replaces one of the two. It replaces the older one, which is a mechanical screen, and we call it a mechanical screen because it's not mechanized. We expect the JUB in a previous amendment had put together the conceptual drawings for this band screen. This amendment actually contracts with them to continue the process to help us procure and install the band screen. The amount of the amendment itself, the contract with JUB is $40,900. The estimated cost of the screen itself is $200,000 installed. The recommended action is to look at the amendment and authorize the amendment to for JUB Engineering as for professional engineering services to procure and install the wastewater treatment plant band screen. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Greg, I'd just like to congratulate you on completely corrupting my mind to now be obsessed with things like inflow and infiltration. I attempted to take a vacation with my daughter to Western Washington the last 4 days, and I found myself analyzing the water treatment facility in Leavenworth, Washington, just 2 days ago, and thinking about all the rain we were getting over the last few days. I was just wondering, do you have any preliminary data on the inflow and infiltration from the recent rain event and how that impacted our pipes and our water treatment plant that you could share with us? I'm dying to know. We got over 3 inches of rain in 2 days. It seems pretty, a pretty major event.
This really makes my day in my my nerdy world. The other part was, do you have a prop? And I didn't. I thought, I told Jennifer I was going to keep it short and sweet. And but this particular question, and absolutely, weather and issues related to weather, especially since I got here, we had a tremendous rain on snow event back in February. And the first thing I did was, just try to capture all the weather data I could just to try and understand that, including, and you've seen some of those graphs, right, related to its effect on the wastewater treatment plant. And for those of you who've been here a while, you know that I&I has been a big issue as to trying to size the capacity of the plant. So the two storms we had, we had one back around June 3rd, and then we had just this most recent one. And it was about 1.5 inches on that first one. This most recent one finished up, just over 1 inch as well.
Wow.
These are extraordinary storms. Even for this area. And I lived out in Washington, by the way, in areas where it rained up to 60 inches a year, for instance. And this kind of water, certainly makes you pay attention. To answer your question, though, specifically, besides other things, erosive effects, I've been up to the diversion dam in front of the Little Sand Creek water treatment plant, and it was overflowing probably like it's not seen for a long time. I think dating back to maybe 97 or something to that effect. The good news up there is that the dam and the work that was done not so long ago with reinforcement is holding up really well. But boy, it was overflowing. And then erosion and stormwater issues within town itself. Both flooding and erosion up on the watershed, for some particular trails that we've talked about, proper construction of the trails and not so proper. And if they're too vertical, too direct, they tend to carry the water in the road as a result. So after those two storms, what they did, they effectively raised the water table also. So we've sealed up the sewer system, to a certain elevation. We've done the best we can. We find the leaks, we seal them up. But if the water table comes up, it'll go up over the top of a lot of the work we've done, and start finding new intrusion or new spots to get into the wastewater treatment plant or into the collection system and ergo the treatment plant. Total of 3 inches then over, 3 weeks, say, we were flowing at just over 2.3, somewhere in that 2.5 million gallons a day as a result of the June 3rd water table rise, if you will. And then as a result of this last storm, that put us over 5 million gallons a day. So it had a profound effect. And this was a unique storm in the fact that it was all thought out. It was just simple, just rain events, not rain on snow events or melting events necessarily. So that informs us greatly. And we still have our equipment out there in the collection system monitoring this. And we have one system collecting, or one monitor collecting a system that we've improved over the years for I&I, and one that's a control that hasn't been improved. So we'll see the effect of all the investment we've made over the last several years for sewer line replacement, lateral replacement. Great question, and thank you for looking out. I appreciate that. These are important issues. As we talk about the comp plan and these other things, these strategic plan, we're seeing how these major capital projects have a lot to do and a lot of effect on these this other planning efforts we're doing.
You had shown us some charts from the rain on snow event from a while back where there was just peaks in the inflow. Would there be a similar peak from the last few days of rain? Like if we were to look at that in the future? I'm just curious if that's something would a rain event like that, not rain on snow, but just a rain event, achieve a similar peak?
They have, and they did.
Mhm.
What's unique about them, you'll see the storms themselves, have their usual bell curve, and and they'll then be exhausted. But the effect on the treatment plant is to kind of carry on out for quite a while. And that, I think, in my mind, shows that you've raised the water table, and it takes a long time to drain that water table back down.
Interesting. Thanks, Craig.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to share that I think there may have been more than one citizen that after this most recent storm realized that their lateral is not fully connected because they had backflush into their business or homes or whatnot, because I experienced that at my own place of work. So it became readily apparent that when the water table got that high without it fully being connected to the sewer system. So I'm just wondering how many other people may have had trouble this past few days. Just nowhere for the water to go.
Just a continuation of a discussion with Jason there. I'm curious if you've had a chance, or if you recall looking back historically, what a similar storm that's a rain on snow event, what that was peaking at. Because I know, when we started this I&I program, we would see 14 million gallons a day, right? And I think we have gotten it down to around the peaks that I've seen recently have been around the 10 million, but those are high, big event rain on snow events. But comparing apples to apples, what have you seen in terms of, summertime heavy or springtime heavy rain events?
Well, thank you, Mayor. The beauty of this project and this monitoring equipment that we currently have in the system is that it'll be wrapping up here soon, by the way, but it did catch this event. And then that data from the monitoring folks goes back to JUB and Steve James in particular, who's been with us since, 10, 15 years at least. He knows or will be able to research the hydrology on this. I personally don't know. I captured what I could,
Mhm.
and I expect to go back because there's a bunch of great data on the INI that I can go try and find. But Steve James is going to be driving up or drawing up that report as well. And then anecdotally, the last rain on snow event, you're right. I think historically, typically, and the peak event ever was that 14 million gallons. But it wasn't uncommon up until you started these projects 10 years ago or longer, that we would exceed 10 million gallons in a similar storm. This storm was also, this rain on snow in February was a big one. And I have talked to Steve about that. And it peaked out at 8 million gallons. To me, that shows that it has been effective. And these projects you have done and invested in have made a difference.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions, council? Madam Clerk, do we have anyone from the public that would like to comment on this issue?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation, Greg. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution for the third amendment to the agreement with JUB Engineers Incorporated. Is there a motion? It's been
Second.
moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Groot,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Dick.
Yes.
Okay, and the third amendment to the agreement with JUB is approved. The final item on the agenda this evening is a proposed joint powers agreement with the city of Dover for construction services and Ontario street improvements. I will now yield the floor to construction manager Holly Ellis. Thank you, Holly.
Thanks. I'm gonna share my screen. Short presentation. Okay, I'll start with just a quick overview of the project and then we'll dive into the action. So this is the Ontario project. City of Dover contracted with Interstate to repave a portion of Dover just past Lower Syringa where the railroad tracks are, east to city limits. What we have an opportunity is to have a change order for that contract and extend the limits into Sandpoint city limits. So the action before council today is to enter into a JPA, which would allow us to do a change order for that contract, and then we could work in Sandpoint. Sandpoint would pick up at city limits and go east to Lincoln. In front of you is a cross section of what that improvement looks like in a zoomed in area of Sandpoint limits. So our project, again, picking up at city limits and moving to Lincoln. In addition to repaving, we would also widen our Ontario on the north side, approximately 4 feet. This would increase the width of the road to 24 feet. The importance of this is we're seeing increased traffic on Ontario as the area develops and we have more traffic on Highway 2. Prior to construction, residents will be notified. Construction would begin in July. The project would be over by the end of the summer. Those timelines would be negotiated in that change order contract. We would have a road closure on Ontario, but we would keep access open to residents and locals. So to sort of summarize, after we get that JPA agreement, we'll negotiate a change order. It'll come back to council July 6th, and we'll request award of the change order. And that's at that time, we'll have a specific dollar amount, we'll have plans, better timeline, scope of work. Estimated cost is less than $200,000. And did want to just emphasize a huge thank you to Dover for bringing this project forward, and JUB engineers did an incredible job putting together a plan set for us under a really stringent timeline, but they delivered. And just a huge thank you to them. And that is what I have.
Thanks, Holly. Appreciate that. Does council have any questions?
Not questions, more of a comment. So thanks for being here. It's nice to see your presentations. And I know that that community there is going to be very excited about having this improvement. And I think that the collaboration between Dover and the engineering group, these are the things that we want to see, to be able to try to get as much done in the same time, efficient and effective. So excited for this project.
Mr.
Well
Mayor.
said.
Hi, Holly. First question, are there going to be curbs on this rebuilt section of Ontario?
We do have curb on the south side, and if I go back to my cross section. And on the south side where we have that existing development, Timber Creek, they have curb, and I think we're going to continue to put curb, but on the north side, there wouldn't be any curb.
Okay. I'm just wondering what the reason, why wouldn't we put a curb in if that's typical of city streets? Maybe I'm mistaken there.
So I don't know, Amanda remembers the answer to this? Kelly? I think it's because there's an existing ditch possibly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. May I address the question? Two factors playing into that. First is, yes, there is an existing ditch on the north side of Ontario Street, as Holly pointed out. However, the primary reason is this isn't actually going to be designed to our traditional complete streets design, where we would have a sidewalk on the north side, a buffer zone, as well as a curb yet. So maybe in the future, if we have sufficient funds, that's a project that we could certainly take on. In this case, we were trying our best to move the project forward in a manner that aligned with the existing construction contract to be able to deliver. Also, to be able to deliver on our maintenance of the roadway was the higher priority versus delaying the project to be able to complete that overarching design that takes substantially more time and coordination with residents.
Sure, understood. One more question, maybe either one of you. With the 4-foot widening, is there any opportunity for a bike lane on this section of Ontario?
I'm going to say no, but I mean,
Typically, no. A collector would have a minimum of 20 feet of travel way. So that would only allow for 4 feet of a bike lane, and bike lanes are each 5 foot. So it would require a 30-foot travel way, meaning paved service, to have a bike lane on both sides. So in this case, it would be more of a share situation where bikes would be sharing the road with the travel.
Okay.
So the additional 4 feet provides for a shoulder, 2 foot of shoulder on each side of those travel lanes.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Holly.
Amanda.
Madam Clerk, is there anyone that would like to comment on this issue from the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution for a joint powers agreement with the City of Dover for construction services for Ontario street improvements. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor McAllister,
Yes.
Counselor Welker,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Groot.
Yes.
And the resolution for a joint powers agreement is approved. And with that, no further business this evening. This meeting is adjourned.